When we hear stories from those who lived through certain times in history, we usually hear the exciting stuff, such as heroic acts, immense suffering, and dramatically changed lives. However, these are never the majority. Most people go through major world events living a hardworking and honest life, such as Elsie, who thought her life was simple, uneventful, and a bit boring, quite frankly. However, as you listen and reflect on stories of regular life in Escalon, California, from Prohibition through 2 world wars and the Cold War, you're given the gift of a glimpse of a regular but steadfast life during those events you read about in history books. And without realizing it, she reaches out to touch and influence future generations, you, with some sage advice. These are Elsie's memories, an everyday person like yourself, whose life of contribution are weaved in the fabric of our great nation. Learn from her. You were 10 years old during the when your dad died, and during the Great Depression. You were about that age.
Yes.
And you are, I'm sorry, how old are you right now?
I'll be 99.
You're going to be 99 in April.
I'll be 99 in April.
In April, okay. What about World War One?
Well, my uncle, my mother's brother, served in World War One.
What did he do? You don't remember?
I remember him wearing that funny-looking hat that they had at that time, and the leggings.
She had a story about that.
You have a story about Prohibition?
I love that one. That's my favorite.
Well, there was this man that had the little boy the same age as I am, or I was, and he set up a still in the chicken house, and his son's name was Aldo, and we never gathered eggs so many times in one day as we did. Because every time you saw a strange car coming up the lane, you had to go and tell Mr. Gambini that the strange car was coming, and then everything shut down.
Gambini, huh?
But everybody was running a still at the same time. The neighbors were running one, and
Is that why you suppose the Prohibition Amendment didn't stick around?
I never even thought anything about when the prohibition ended. All I thought about was that they wouldn't catch him and put us all in jail. And well, they always knew when, I don't know what you call the people that would come around, but they would move the wine or the whiskey the night before. To this day, I don't know how they knew that the next day would be the day that these, like they called them, the big shots.
Maybe because the last name was Gambini.
But as children, we never thought anything like that. We just did as we were told, to let them know when a strange car was coming.
How about when you were growing up, like in your house? Of course, you didn't have electricity or indoor plumbing.
I remember lamps. And then I remember when the electricity came. But we didn't have indoor plumbing or anything like they have now.
When did you have any kind of indoor plumbing? About what age, do you remember?
After I got married and moved into town and had all this good stuff.
Oh,
But then again, you were in the same boat. Your neighbors were in the same boat as you were, so you never gave them much thought. And the kids that you went to school with were in the same position that you were in. Like I say, in those days you didn't have the rich people and the poor people. It seemed like all of us were the same. At least the kids that we went to school with.
I've heard a lot of that from people who lived through the Depression and that era, that they didn't know they were poor until somebody told them.
That's right. I remember that my folks would get a sack of bread. God only knew how old that bread was, but for 10 cents a bag. Of course, Mama baked bread. And then again, like I said, we lived off the land. We had our beef, we had our milk, we had our eggs. Mama would make butter. So we must have not wanted that bad for something. I remember going to the grocery store with my dad and wishing I could get a jawbreaker or something like that, but even a penny in those days. I don't know if you're familiar with Escalon or not, but where I was born on Lone Tree Road at the corner there of Brennan, and I remember walking from there to Escalon below the road now, and say maybe a half a mile. They had druggies, a grocery store and gas and stuff like that. And for a penny I would walk that every Saturday and get a caramel. And I got to telling somebody about that the other day, and I says, maybe that's why I don't like caramel candy now. But can you imagine a child walking that far for a piece of candy? I bet even your granddaughter wouldn't walk that far for a piece of candy.
Probably not.
Would you?
Half
How often I got candy?
What about your clothes? Did your mom make your clothes? Yeah, I thought so.
Buy the flour to make the bread and use for the house. And then the sack always had some flowers or something on it. And she'd make our panties out of that.
Really?
And we were proud of that because Mama made them.
Yeah.
I'm starting to sound like Dolly Parton and her
Yeah.
coat of many colors.
Anything after World War II?
Well, things got better for us out on the ranch.
Oh, so you're saying things got better. Were they still bad from the Great Depression? Were they still going bad all the way through the war for you then?
Well, I imagine so. You know, like I say, what do I remember about that?
But you do remember you said things getting better.
Yeah, well,
How did they get better?
I guess because our boys came home. My brother was in the war and he came home safe and sound. Both brothers did. And to me that was
That was
that
big.
things were getting better.
Interesting. Because the people were coming home. Because the soldiers were coming home, things were getting better.
Coming home alive.
Did you know anybody that did not come home?
Oh, there were several from Escalon that didn't.
Really? Was there any recollection of what was going on with the Soviet Union at the end of the war when the Soviet Union,
Well, I remember my uncle and my mother talking in Italian about Russia.
what were they, do you remember anything they were talking about? So they were talking in Italian. You spoke Italian too,
Spoke Italian.
but you don't have an accent right now. How
I
long,
haven't spoken Italian in 40 years.
when did you stop speaking Italian?
When my brother Willie passed away in 1977.
Why would that be, was he the
I
only,
didn't have anybody to
He was the last one.
Italian too.
Oh.
He'd come over every morning and have coffee, and we'd sit there and chit-chat in Italian. And then after he passed away, I didn't have anybody to talk to in Italian.
And so it kind of just died out. Do you think you remember any still?
Pardon?
Do you think you still remember? Could you speak with anybody in Italian, or do you think it's been too long?
In fact, I try to think how to say some things in Italian. It
It's
just
been a while.
doesn't come.
Okay.
But I can understand people talking. I can pick it out. Well, my first husband passed away at the age of 31 from a massive heart attack. And left me with 3 little children, 7, 5, and 3. And then I met this Portuguese man that was a bachelor at the age of 39, and he took on me and my 3 children and raised them. And he passed away at the age of 90. In fact, yesterday was 15 years that he passed away. But there's not too many men that would take on a widow with 3 little kids.
How old were your children at the time?
When we got married, Pat was 9 and Jim was 7 and Rick was 5.
Wow.
5, 7, and 9. It gets kind of lonely, but survive. My son went to the Vietnam War.
And
My
you,
oldest son.
your oldest son did.
Yes.
Did he come back okay?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember him telling any stories about what was happening over there?
They don't talk about what happens over there.
That happens a lot during war. People come and they don't want to talk about it. What do you remember about the Vietnam War?
What year?
That would be in the 60s and 70s.
Okay, so what? All I remember is that he was over in Vietnam and that he came home safe and sound. Of course, he came home, any sound like a car backfiring would sound like a gun or something like that. He'd get paranoid.
Oh.
But talking about it, even to this day, he won't talk about it.
He won't. Is that him right
No.
there? Oh.
That's it. My oldest son, he was born in 46.
And your son still won't talk about Vietnam now?
The only time he talks about it is the care packages that he got.
Did you used to send him some?
I used to send him care packages, and he lived in barracks over there. And whenever a package came for him, all the boys would line up on the bed and share the package with him. I'm thinking about my parents, of my mother living out on the ranch, not knowing how to drive, and kind of being a prisoner in her own home out there. And things like that. How much better I have it than what she had. But there again, she did the best she could with what she had.
What was life like with your mom growing up?
Well, she grew up in Italy.
No, what yours as you were growing up as a teenager? What was life like in Escalon?
You didn't get very far. You were out on the ranch, and that's where you were until you learned how to drive, and then things got a little bit better. But outside of that, I can't say that my childhood wasn't good, because living off the ranch And we live next to the Lone Tree Creek, and we go fishing every day. But there again, my poor mother didn't know where we were. We could have drowned, but we didn't have to worry about somebody snatching you and keeping you a hostage or a prisoner. In one way, things were a lot better for teenagers than they are now, I think. I may be wrong, but that's the way I think. And see, my mother was only 53 when my dad passed away. And things were rough. But she made it until she passed away at the age of 74, so things were good.
What was the fondest, your best memory of with your mother?
With my mother, well, there again, she wasn't just my mother, she was my best friend, because I was a baby of the family and I was the only one that was home with her day in and day out. The boys were there. They took care of the cattle and milked the cows and stuff like that, but at night they'd go their way, and the baby of the family stayed with Mama.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have-
Oh, you have brothers?
2 brothers and a sister, but I had a little sister that Mama was 7 months pregnant, and she had a buggy accident. And she threw Dino out, wrapped him up in a blanket and threw him out, and he landed on a bush. But the little sister was born with broken arms and broken legs. And she lived long enough to be baptized. So when I was born, the story goes that Mama always said, "Well, we're going to name her," and Papa always said, "Elsie Mary," after the little one that passed away. But at that time, they were up in Walima, which is by Point Reyes. In fact, that Point Reyes station, that was where they had their dairy before they moved to Santa Clara. Then from Santa Clara, they moved to Escalon. I often wonder myself, how come I've been living such a long life?
Well, for 98, you appear very, or almost, practically 99. You look very, very healthy, and
No, there's nothing physically wrong with me except for cholesterol and high blood pressure pill, and they take care of that, so,
sounds like you still got a few years left.
pardon?
Sounds like you still got a few years left.
I hope so.
What do you hope to do with in your lifetime that you have left?
The same as I'm doing today. Nothing changes. I gave up driving, which I sometimes wish I hadn't, but then again, you're better off not being out on the road with all the crazies. And having good neighbors like your mother-in-law helps a lot.
Let's say that you were in a room full of teenagers. Okay?
A room full of what?
Teenagers.
Okay.
Okay? Nice teenagers. Okay? I know when we hear teenagers, we think, no, but not regular nice teenagers. Okay? And what would you say to them?
That's kind of a hard question, because no matter what you tell a teenager to do, they're going to do the opposite anyhow. because I have a grandson that's in the Navy back in North Carolina, and he has a 13-year-old boy. And things are good for them, but I can't say that everything is good for everybody. But I would tell teenagers nowadays to not forget their morals, because there's a person up there that keeps watching over you every day.
Do you find that happening a lot?
I find that a lot of the teenagers nowadays have thrown their morals aside.
Why do you think that is?
You want to say the upbringing in the house, but that's not fair either, because your parents do the best they can with what they have. And then what you make of your life, that's your choice that you chose.